tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So the style of this book is Ajahn Chah writing about Luang Por Chah, and then it has quotes. It's interspersed with quotes and teachings from Luang Por Chah. So whenever I say quote, that can be understood that that's Luang Por Chah speaking, unless stated otherwise. The single chair. Meditation practices that involve directing the thinking mind rather than turning away from it are based on the principle that sustaining an unbroken stream of awareness on a theme of contemplation instead of a physical sensation can also lead to a gathering of the mind's forces. This produces a rapture that takes the mind beyond the pull of worldly thoughts and desires to a samadhi that provides the platform for the profound work of wisdom. But whatever meditation practice was adopted, Luang Por emphasized that mindfulness must play a central role. He compared watching the mind with mindfulness and alertness to a shopkeeper keeping a sharp eye on his goods when a group of mischievous children come into his shop. In another simile, he said that the mind is like a room with a single chair. When mindfulness sits firmly on the seat facing the door, then any guest entering the room is known immediately. Without a chair to sit on, no guest stays for long. Mindfulness, bolstered by confidence in the Buddha's path to liberation and by right effort, resulted in a samadhi that bore within it the seeds of wisdom and liberation. Quote, mindfulness is the nurse and protector of samadhi. It is the Dhamma which allows all other wholesome Dhammas to arise in balance and harmony. Mindfulness is life. At any moment that you lack mindfulness, it is as if you're dead. Lack of mindfulness is called heedlessness, and it robs your words and actions of all meaning. Whatever form of recollection mindfulness takes, it gives rise to self-awareness, wisdom, all kinds of good qualities. Any Dhamma which lacks mindfulness is incomplete. Mindfulness is what governs standing, walking, sitting, and lying down. It's not only during sitting meditation that mindfulness is required. Outside of formal meditation periods, you must have a constant mindfulness and alertness and give care and attention to your actions. If you do that, a sense of wise shame will arise. You'll feel ashamed of improper actions or speech. As the sense of shame becomes stronger, then so will restraint. With strong restraint, there is no heedlessness. Wherever you go, mindfulness must be present. The Buddha said, practice mindfulness a great deal, develop it a great deal. Mindfulness is the Dhamma that will guard over your past and present actions and those that you are about to perform. It is of great benefit to you. Know yourself at every moment, and then you will have a constant sense of right and wrong. That awareness of the rightness or wrongness of everything that occurs in your mind will arouse a sense of wise shame, and you will refrain from acting in bad or mistaken ways. End quote. A meditation instruction. Attention to the finer details of the sitting posture has never been a prominent feature of the Theravada meditation tradition. Very few forest monks sit in full lotus with each foot upturned on the opposite thigh, or fold their hands in a perfect mudra. The basic instructions are simply to establish a posture that is stable and erect, with the main criterion being that the posture be one in which the meditator can sit for a reasonably long time with the minimum of unnecessary discomfort. Luang Por treated posture as a straightforward matter. At the beginning of a meditation session, he would simply give instructions to take the cross-legged posture, place the right leg on the left, the right hand on the left. Keep the back straight. Make oneself comfortable, not too tense and not too relaxed, and close the eyes. Having paid homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, meditators either turned to their main meditation object or began with a preliminary practice. Luang Por sometimes suggested going through the 32 parts of the body before turning to the breath. Apart from being a good mindfulness practice in itself, this reinforced skillful perceptions of the body that could then be taken up for deeper investigation when the mind had been strengthened by samadhi. Luang Por also taught less experienced meditators to follow the breath in and out of the body for a certain period before focusing on one particular point, such as the tip of the nose. Quote, "Focus your mindfulness so that it follows the breath entering your body and leaving it. Follow the beginning of the breath, the middle of the breath, the end of the breath. With mindfulness, keep the breath in mind, and with alertness, be aware that right now you are breathing. On the inhalation, the beginning of the breath is at the nose tip, the middle at the heart, and the end at the abdomen. On the exhalation, the beginning of the breath lies at the abdomen, the middle at the heart, and the end at the tip of the nose. Focus on these 3 points. The mind, your awareness, has no time to sneak off and take hold of other objects because it's preoccupied with being aware, right here, of both the inhalation and the exhalation. If the mind goes off in search of other objects, it shows that mindfulness has slipped. Establish it again. Be aware of exactly where the breath is. Be aware of exactly where the breath is passing at each moment. Keep looking. Sometimes your mind runs off for a long time without you being aware of it. Suddenly you realize that mindfulness has been lost again. Start afresh. If you practice in this way, then you will develop a good working knowledge of the beginning, middle, and end of the breath. After you've trained in this way for a sufficient time, mindfulness will be constantly present on the inhalation and the exhalation. There will be mindfulness at the beginning of the breath, its middle, and end. Initially, you will have a few difficulties, but later, as you become more experienced, it will no longer be necessary to follow the breath in and out. Now anchor the awareness at the tip of your nose. Stop right there and note whether the breath is long or short. Be aware of the inhalation and the exhalation at that point. When you first start to practice sitting meditation, give this method a try. When you're concentrating on the breath, there's no need to force it. It's similar to learning how to use a pedal sewing machine. To sew properly, you need to find a rhythm between your hand and foot. So when you're first learning to use a sewing machine, what do? You practice pedaling freely without sewing anything. Once you can pedal fluently, then you start on some cloth. Your breath is the same. There's no need to make it a certain way. It doesn't matter whether it's long or short, provided that it feels comfortable. If the breath is too long or too short or too strong, don't force it. Allow it to find its own balance. All you have to do is focus on the inhalation and the exhalation. You don't have to contemplate anything else. It's enough to be aware of the breath. When you do this, certain thoughts will arise. What's the use of this? And so on. Keep going. Don't get caught in doubts. There's no need to answer them. There's no need to think. It's not your job. Your job is simply to be aware of the breath as it enters and leaves the body. You don't want to see deities or Brahma gods, but you want to see the breath. It is sufficient merely that you don't forget the breath. Understand and then cut off the various objects that pass in and out of awareness and let them go. Thoughts and moods are changeful. Perhaps when you start sitting, you begin to feel homesick, and the mind starts proliferating about this matter and that. The moment you start thinking of home, then remind yourself, it's changeful, meine. It's unsure. Fond thoughts of home are impermanent, and so are negative ones. You can't believe any of it. Your mind lies to you. You have to assert this changeful nature of things. Sometimes you hate this person and that, but it doesn't last. Sometimes you love this person and that, but it doesn't last either. Pin the mind down right there, and where can it go? When you hate someone, you fabricate a certain image of them. When you love someone, you do the same. The mind starts to suffer. Sometimes you may detest someone so much that whenever you think of them, tears of fury start to flow. Do you see what I mean? How could that be real and lasting? See mental states as merely mental states. All of them are impermanent. We have to cut things off because they will delude us if we don't. We perceive something as good, and we remind ourselves that the good is changeful. Something else is experienced as bad, and that is changeful too. Don't let your mind grasp onto the good. Don't let it grasp onto the bad. If you have the measure of mental states in this way, then they lose their significance. Just keep working away at it. The states that arise, good or bad, have no intrinsic value, and they will gradually fade away. If you follow them and keep an eye on them, you're bound to see this truth of changefulness. Your initial practice has to be like this: be mindful. Subsequently, you will see the breath, mindfulness, and the mind simultaneously at one point. The word see here doesn't refer to ordinary vision. It's a seeing with awareness by the internal, not the external eye. The awareness of the breath is here, mindfulness is here, the sense of knowing, the mind is here. They converge in one harmonious whole. When we see that harmony, the mind will detach from sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, worry and agitation, and indecision. These 5 hindrances will be gone completely. All that you will see is the breath. There will be just mindfulness and the mind in one point. With the absence of the 5 hindrances, you can take it that the mind has entered samadhi. You must know when the breath is coarse and when it is fine, and you have to know right there. After that, you must focus on the breath to make it more and more subtle and fine until its coarseness has disappeared. The refinement of the breath is such that as you sit and contemplate the breath, it becomes so subtle that there's almost no breath, or so it seems. Don't be alarmed. The breath is still there. It's just that it's extremely subtle. So, what do you do then? You must use your mindfulness to make the absence of breath your meditation object. At this point, some people may become alarmed, afraid that their breathing will stop and that it's dangerous. You must reassure yourself that it's quite safe and that there's no danger. All that is necessary is that you maintain mindfulness, the awareness, the knowing. The mind is now in a very subtle state. At this level, it doesn't have to be controlled. You don't have to do anything. All that is needed is to maintain mindfulness and alertness. You should be aware that at that moment the mind is acting automatically. It's not necessary to adjust its quality. Now simply maintain a steady mindfulness and alertness. The mind has fully entered the state of lucid calm. Sometimes the mind will enter and leave this state at short intervals. Sometimes when it has withdrawn, it will become lucidly calm again for a short time, and then it will emerge once more and become aware of sense objects. The mind, having withdrawn from samadhi, comprehends the nature of various things that arise in awareness. There will be a rapture in the Dhamma. Wisdom will arise. Many kinds of knowledge will arise at this point. The mind at this moment will have entered the stage of vipassana. You must firmly establish mindfulness, concentration, and alertness. When wisdom arises, the mind is in vipassana, which is a continuation of samatha. This is called the process of mind. You must attain mastery, wasi, in entering and leaving states of tranquility. When you have done so, then you will know the nature of the states of mind and the nature of the mind that withdraws. You must be astute in entering and leaving samadhi, establishing a strong degree of mindfulness and alertness at these points. Here the mind has come to an end of turmoil. Whether it's moving forward or back, all the states of mind lie within the lucid calm. On reaching the appropriate time for the meditation to end, review what you did before you entered samadhi. How did you establish your mind so as to be so peaceful? Then, the next time you sit, you must consider the first thing to do. Recall how you focused your mind when you withdrew from samadhi. You must know this. Although you have ended your sitting meditation, you should not look on it as an end to samadhi. You should be determined to continue being aware and focused and mindful. Whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, you must be constantly mindful." End quote. An aside. The meditation instruction in the previous section is long and detailed. It includes a number of technical terms and references to some advanced levels of practice and subtle states of mind. However, it should be borne in mind that this instruction was not intended by Luang Por to be a definitive account of the meditation process. The text is a transcription of one particular instruction given on one particular day to one particular group of monastics. Luang Por did not write a meditation manual, and he rarely spoke about more advanced levels of practice in public. For this reason, some of his views on meditation practice will always remain obscure. And this is also true about his advice on more basic matters. In the paragraph above, dealing with the choice of a meditation technique, the statement is made that meditators should stick with a practice for a reasonable period of time before deciding to change it. But how long is a reasonable time? Certainly a reasonable question, but not, unfortunately, one that can be answered with words from Luang Por's mouth. A period of time measured in weeks or months, rather than hours or minutes, would be the answer he would probably, but did not actually give. Accurately conveying Luang Por's meditation teachings is thus somewhat hampered by the unevenness of the body of recorded evidence. Some topics are well covered, others not so well at all. Complications are also caused by the fact that the material that is available is transcribed from instructions given ad hoc and which are reflective of time, place, and audience. Luang Por's response to questions about the importance of the cultivation of jhana, for example, varied according to the character and accumulated foundational virtues of the questioner. In other words, if he saw meditators had a well-developed capacity for jhana, he would encourage it, and it would appear that he considered this the superior path. But if he saw meditators had only a weak capacity, or were getting caught up in the trap of craving for jhana, he might de-emphasize it. If he saw that meditators possessed strong powers of analysis, he might encourage them to make use of those powers when the mind had gone beyond the hindrances, without waiting for the stabilization of mind provided by jhana. In this, his teaching paralleled that of his great contemporary, Longta Mahabua, who coined the phrase, Panya cultivating samadhi, or wisdom develops samadhi. Another problem is encountered in translating the transcribed records of Luang Por's meditation teachings, and it springs from the nature of the Thai language. Thai lends itself much more to flexible ambiguity than to scientific precision. For example, it insists much less on the use of the third-person pronouns than is the case in English. Questions of who or what are acting upon whom or what can be hard to determine with any great degree of certainty. In matters dealing with the physical world, context often comes to the translator's rescue. In matters dealing with the more profound functions of the mind, the translator is rarely so fortunate. One last layer of difficulty is furnished by the occasionally idiosyncratic manner in which Luang Por and his contemporaries in the Isan forest tradition used Pali technical terms. For readers coming from a more academic Theravada background, this can be a source of frustration. For a translator, it may involve being faced with passages in which the meaning ascribed to them to a term by the teacher does not correspond exactly to the definition in a Pali-English dictionary. One way to look at this discrepancy is by means of an analogy. If the suttas might be compared with a photograph of the nature of things, then the teachings of the great masters would be like paintings. In their attempt to bring out their sense of what is before them, painters sometimes slightly manipulate forms or use colors not recognized by the camera. Their intention is to transmit the truth of their experience to the best of their abilities. Similarly, the great forest masters of Isan have, on occasion, put fidelity to the Dhamma that they have realized above a strict fidelity to the texts. To summarize, the meditation teachings of Luang Por, represented in this chapter, contain many gems and useful reflections, but, for the reasons given above, they do not coalesce into a complete system. If Luang Por were alive today and speaking to a student of his teachings, he would perhaps give the following advice. Attention to detail is good, precision and clarity is good, but always be willing to tolerate a certain element of incompleteness and ambiguity. So I'll leave it there.
What definition of mindfulness have you found to be the most helpful to use? Because it's a term thrown around a lot, actually, and I don't know how satisfactory of a definition I've actually heard of what mindfulness is, other than like the sense of knowing, but like, any thoughts? How do we define mindfulness?
Any answer? I think a good definition of mindfulness, the question is what's a good definition for mindfulness, because it's a term that's thrown around a lot today. And I think a good definition of mindfulness is mindfulness, sati, has its roots in like recollection. So if you just use the word sati or mindfulness by itself, then it's knowing what's the right thing to do at any given time according to Dhamma. So it's connected with right effort. So it's like remembering to go back to the breath. That would be mindfulness. That would be sati. Or remembering to focus the awareness on the breath, knowing to focus the awareness on the body at any given time. That would be sati. But then it's almost invariably coupled with sampajanya. So sati sampajanya is mindfulness and clear comprehension. So clear knowing of your object, clear knowing of what you're being mindful of or what you've remembered to put your awareness onto. So like sati is like remembering to direct the awareness, and then right mindfulness is remembering to direct the awareness in the correct way. So it's like the way we direct our awareness. Or I would say sati is the actual act of remembering to direct our awareness. That's why that's why in Thai they say Kwam Ruluk Chop, which literally means right recollection.
I really appreciate Ajahn Chah's the simile of the teachers painting and painting their interpretation. It also reminds me of in one of Bhikkhu Bodhi's introductions, he talks about the suttas being like these, like sort of black and white grainy reconnaissance photographs of terrain. And so then you have these teachers sort of taking those sort of really, sort of poor reconnaissance photographs and then doing an interpretive painting of it. And yeah, I just really appreciate that.
Also, his comments, Ajahn Chah's comments about that long explanation of a particular approach in meditation being kind of, a single episode of talking to a particular audience, and that, that particular sequence, which it seems like it could be a lifetime of work rather than one meditation session, is one very appropriate snapshot. But it also reminds me that Lumpar Pasano and, quoting Ajahn Chah would also emphasize really finding out for oneself, how it works, what technique, what approach, what place to focus with your breathing, and to apply it and put effort and see what the results are and adjust as individuals from that, rather than trying to hold to a particular cookie cutter model that may work for some but not for others.
Yeah, and that also reminds me of when Ajahn Sumedho first went to stay with Ajahn Chah. He was already ordained as a bhikkhu before he went to Ajahn Chah. And Ajahn Chah asked him, what type of meditation are you doing? And he said, he's doing this Chan meditation from Master Shu Yun, asking himself, who am I? And Ajahn Chah just said, good, just keep doing that. And he didn't give him any other instruction. And so the Dhamma talks in the Thai forest tradition are not around cookie cutter techniques that, there's no Ajahn Chah cookie cutter technique where everybody has to do this particular technique every time. Because where cookie cutter techniques come from is where a teacher will teach what worked for them. But Ajahn Chah recognized that what worked for him won't necessarily work for everybody. So then you come back to more the way the Buddha taught, which was according to the proclivities of each individual. And that's very much the way Ajahn Chah taught. So when he gives these 6-hour Dhamma talks on the Wanpra, a lot of it is just around the whole Noble Eightfold Path. It's not around just meditation, but it's about, he's guiding people into just getting the mind to settle, and finding various ways to do that through developing things like wakefulness and patient endurance and finding the right balance.
And Ajahn Sucitto has a nice way of kind of rounding that out with, once you find through some sort of contemplation or preliminary, quote-unquote preliminary reflections, that the mind, the body settles very naturally, and then the breath will find you. You don't have to go looking for it or searching for it to pin it down, grab it, and hold on to it, and not let it go. If you prepare the mind appropriately, then the breath naturally just settles. Your awareness just naturally settles with the breathing. You don't have to struggle.
Yeah, that's one of the brilliant aspects of breath meditation too, is that the mind will naturally be drawn to the breath. The breath will be refreshing. And you'll feel it'll naturally want to settle on it.
Ajahn Nyaniko, I just wanted to say I appreciate your kind of definition about mindfulness. We were talking about time sequence question, and remember Ajahn Sona, there was a retreat, a Burkhan retreat up there, and he was kind of talking about it in a very similar way, and it was quite helpful to hear, because it was all about what he was saying is just you have to understand it in the context of the Eightfold Path, and in conjunction with right effort. So it's all about, like you said, remembering with regard to the wholesome and the unwholesome, and for the purpose of cultivating the wholesome and overcoming the unwholesome, and when it's talked about in that context, then it's it's for the purpose, it's for this larger purpose of overcoming dukkha. It's not just mindfulness for some sort of random purpose, which is the term is kind of muddled though, for all the different ways it's used in society these days. So found it very helpful.
If you'd like a very short description of what would be an example of establishing mindfulness, then you could say when you're doing something, asking yourself, what am I doing right now? That's right there, that's establishing mindfulness. Or when you're speaking, stopping and saying, wait, what am I saying? Is it in line with the path or not? And then that's establishing mindfulness right there. Just coming back to what am I actually doing? Where's my awareness?
I'd actually been thinking about a similar Dhamma talk from Ajahn Sona when I asked the question, in which Ajahn Sona says that all the definitions of mindfulness have gotten so muddled in the culture that now it just goes back to this analogy that the Buddha uses instead of defining it, about the watchman at the gates of the city deciding who he'll let in and who he won't let in. And in the talk he's like, I'm not going to actually give a definition anymore, but I'll just use the analogy. But I actually quite like the definition of it. I think it was good. Made sense to me.
It's good to know what it is, since the Buddha said it's everything. That's what takes you to the deathless. It's good to, it's like the Yogi Berra quote. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's gotten these days muddled with the notion of focused attention. That's kind of one of the current modern definitions of mindfulness, focused attention. But focused attention is really kind of only one aspect of the whole process of mindfulness.
yeah, that's like perhaps could be a result of establishing mindfulness, but it's like remembering to focus your attention on the right object.
And then to bring that object into the heart for consideration.
And to be fully aware of it
And be
with
fully aware of it,
sampajanya.
right.
And it seems like in like the modern mindfulness kind of like context, like that, what is the right object? That part is just completely absent. One is wholesome and one is unwholesome. Like there's no, I guess they can't talk about that because that's sort of an ethical or religious sort of thing. But that's like one of the key parts that's missing.
Differentiate right mindfulness from wrong attention.
Yeah, the Buddha also said there's right mindfulness and wrong mindfulness. He very clearly defined both of them. You can establish, you can use a whole unwholesome object of mindfulness as well.